Hey everyone, what's going on? Rob from Captain Rob Games here, and today we are going to be discussing the new 5.1 mid-patch changes that are going to Dead by Daylight. Now, for those of you that don't know, this patch will have some sweeping changes to the Trickster killer, giving him a much-needed buff and allowing him to be significantly more competitive in the meta. Now, I have already made a video discussing all of the changes that were on the public test beta. So if you want to have a general idea of what was changed, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to throw a link to that down below in the description so you can get a better idea. In this video specifically, I'm going to be discussing what changed from the public test beta to now and what the end result Trickster that ends up coming into the patch will look like. Let's get started. Okay. So, on the public test beta, there were sweeping changes. I felt personally Trickster was very strong, possibly too strong at doing certain things, still a little bit weak at doing other things. Specifically, Trickster is insane when you're in the open, he is insane when he has line of sight at you, and he is very, very weak at areas where there are high walls and loops where he's unable to use his power. He's extremely, extremely weak. Now, the public test beta changes did not really successfully address this, but they did reduce the number of knives that it required, so he's kind of stronger at what he was already good at and still about the same at what he was weak at. Now, since the PTB was finished and all this feedback was received, a couple points were noted about issues involving specifically the number of knives that he has. They changed the number of knives that it takes to injure from 8 to 6, but they kept the base maximum amount of knives at 60. This created an almost like laughable situation where it felt like you were never really reloading. Like I felt like I reloaded maybe twice, sometimes 3 times in a match, and that felt like it was very, very low. I wasn't really punished much for missing just because the raw amount of knives that I had at any given time. So they did make a change that is going to help that out. Instead of starting with 60 knives, you will now start with 44 knives. And in addition to this, they actually nerfed 2 of the add-ons, which would add the additional knives. So the Trick Pouch used to add 10, and now only adds 4 knives to your inventory. The Bloody Boa used to add 15 knives, they now only add 8 knives to the inventory. So this is a massive nerf to those add-ons. I used to enjoy running the Bloody Boa. I felt that the extra 15 knives was really cool, especially with only 6 knives to injure. Now I think that it's probably not very good. The nerfs were over 50% and just under 50% on the 2 add-ons. That is a very, very significant nerf, and yeah, they're probably not going to get much usage after their nerfs. So that's kind of unfortunate. And then sort of smaller nerfs that were included, the maximum knife rate of fire bonus after throwing 8 knives is 25%, it was 33%. I'll be honest with you, I did not notice a difference between the old live and the PTB, and I haven't really been able to notice on the difference between the PTB and the current live with the new patch. So I don't know. I didn't notice this at all. Maybe it's there, maybe it's significant. I didn't catch it. Didn't really do much to me. And then knife hit indicators reduced in size. Basically, I assume this means it's just going to take up a little bit less of your screen, a little bit smaller, maybe harder to see, but I don't think that's going to have much of an impact. But the primary changes on the PTB are going to be that knife capacity reduction, which will mean that you will run out of knives when chasing and possibly not get to injure the final survivor when you run out of knives. And you will have to reload a little bit more frequently, probably comparable to what Huntress has to do. So that's a fairly significant change to Trickster. Now, I want to talk about him overall. So from the old live to the new live, if you were to boot up the Dead by Daylight game yesterday, and if you were to boot up the game today, what is that Trickster experience going to be like? I think that's going to be quite a different experience. I think that he was overtuned and a little bit buffed too much in the PTB, and I think that his new version is still going to be very strong, very buffed, but I think it's going to be a little bit more reasonable because you are actually kind of punished and penalized for missing knives. I still don't necessarily feel that this was the correct way to address the Trickster. The counter to him is just lose line of sight, loop tight things, force him to mouse 1U. I still think that his iridescent photo card is way too strong and needs to get nerfed. For those of you that don't know, there's an iridescent add-on where you can throw 4 knives at a survivor, they become exposed, and you can then instant down them. It's way too much. I did not see it get nerfed in their patch notes, so that's going to be interesting. But Trickster is going to be an open space mauler. If he catches you out in the open, it's going to be very similar to what happens with Bubba. You're probably going to go down. The difference is Bubba can kind of pressure multiple players at a much faster rate. Trickster can still do that, but he has to hit on multiple survivors to take multiple survivors down. So Bubba's going to be better at a lot of survivors in a small area. Trickster is going to be better at dealing with vaults because he'll still be able to injure people as they go through vaults, whereas Bubba and his chainsaw cannot get the instant down. He has to commit to the mouse 1, and sometimes that can be difficult and you'll miss. So I think Trickster has potential to be really powerful. I think there are still going to be a lot of ways to game him to prevent him from hitting you with knives, but in loops with low walls where he can use his power, you are going to be completely unsafe, and he's going to destroy you in those loops. I think that's going to be his specialty. It's going to be sort of a much easier version of Huntress at punishing survivors. They can crouch all they want. He can just keep moving around and keep throwing knives the entire time. So I think he's going to be extraordinarily stronger than he was, and I think he's going to be a problem for a lot of people. I am, in specific, nervous about hook camping and tunneling. He'll be able to shred you at ranged, similar to how a Bubba can face camp a hook. Yeah, he can down people pretty quickly if he commits to a still target. So unhooks against him are going to be really sketchy. I'm afraid he's going to turn into sort of a ranged camper, but only time will tell. Those are my thoughts on the upcoming patch. That's primarily it. There are some other changes that are coming out. The perk changes I discussed in the previous video, all of the Trickster's perks are going to get a nice buff. They have some interactions and bug fixes that will be quality of life things. So for example, the self-care bug will no longer... Well, it wasn't a bug technically, it was intended, but they fixed it. You would self-care when you tried to unhook someone. So they fixed that order, and now you will actually prioritize the unhook over the self-care. When the killer attempts to grab a survivor, the request is going to be refused by the server. The killer will automatically transition into an attack. If you've watched me play killer live on stream, you know how frustrated I get when you go for the grab and it doesn't give you the grab, and then the survivor turns around and runs away and you get absolutely nothing for it. It's incredibly frustrating. Stun validation is going to be added, so killers will now be stunned and not get those hits where it kind of looks questionable of how did I get that hit. That's unfortunate for killers. That means a lot more stuns with no hits on top of them. But for survivors, probably significantly less frustrating. I've already discussed Strider will now be hard countered by Iron Will. Iron Will at max rank will completely nullify Strider. So that's what we're looking at. A lot of really cool changes here. The big ones, Trickster is going to be a buzzsaw at ranged. So that's what we're looking at. If you like this review, if you like this kind of content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you guys have any questions about what to expect in this patch or what Trickster is going to look like, go ahead and put those in the comment section. I try to answer all my comments. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.